thank you all, and thank you, Matt. The first thing I'm going to say to the panel and myself is, given it's an international audience, we will speak as slowly as we can do. I'm Glaswegian, so I'm Scottish, and I tend to speak quite fast. If you don't understand something I say, just put up your hand. So really excited to be here for the third Arts and Homelessness International Summit. Over the next hour, what we're going to do is introduce you to some of our member street papers, and hopefully have a lively discussion about the role that street papers play, particularly with creative projects. Now, what's personally really exciting for me about this panel, both in London and online, is we've already all met before. So last September we had the Global Street Paper Summit, which is our organisation's flagship event. So everybody that's involved in this today, we've already met, which is rather nice. So, who are we and what do we do? The International Network of Street Papers, or INSP as we call ourselves. We're a UK charity that supports all printed newspapers and magazines sold by homeless people. So some of you in the UK, in fact most of you in the UK will know the big issue. But before I hand over to our panellists, I'm going to tell you some key interesting facts about street papers you may not know about. So the first street paper was not, in fact, the big issue. Most people in the UK assume it was the big issue, but it was actually Street News, which began in the 1980s in New York to help with the homelessness crisis over there, and then they brought the concept back to the UK, and that's where the big issue was born. Fact number 2, INSP was born out of the International Department of the Big Issue, and we're still based in their offices in Glasgow. And there was a realisation at the time there was numerous street papers around the world, and that's why they decided to set up a new network for street paper staff to network and to gain access to news content. So right now, INSP has 92 member street paper organisations in 35 countries. So we're quite an extensive network. And we're similar to AHI because we're a membership organisation as well. Fact number 4, £10.4 million was earned by vendors globally last year. So we are making a substantial difference to the poverty crisis. There are 820 towns and cities across the world where street papers are sold. So if you haven't spotted street papers before, when you're travelling, go out, collect them, buy them, speak to the vendors. Fact number 6, INSP runs its own non-commercially owned newswire. And at a time when the media sector, arguably globally, is very fractured, that's quite significant. So what we do is we pump out in the region of 500 stories every year to all 92 news desks of our members. And INSP has always been based in Glasgow, hence why I only speak broken English. So today's topic is about street papers and the arts and creativity. A lot of creativity goes into journalism and writing, but beyond this, street papers run multiple creative projects in pursuit of their aims of tackling homelessness and poverty. And we'll hear from a really great panel of experts who will tell you about some of these projects in detail. It's fair to say that every one of us in this room is here today because we want to make a difference. We believe in the power of the arts to break down barriers to understanding, to enhance people's lives and livelihoods, to challenge norms and be disruptive. And all of this is also the ethos of the street paper movement, which is why I'm genuinely delighted that we're here. So I'm hoping that today's discussion will give you a bit of a flavour for some of our work and also create some ideas for your own organisations. Delighted we have colleagues from Mexico, Brazil, Switzerland, and of course the UK joining both here in London and online. So what I'm going to do first of all is hand over to each panel member individually, and they'll talk for 2 or 3 minutes to introduce themselves, and then I'll lead with some questions, and then you're welcome to ask questions too. So I'm going to hand over to Maria first of all from Mexico.
Great, thank you so much, Mike. So my name is Maria. I'm the founder and editor-in-chief of Mi Valedor, this magazine. It's turning 10 years in April. So it was set up in 2015. We have issued 35 editions, and we have sold more than 100,000 issues. So it's sold by a homeless population mainly, socially excluded, and people who normally don't have much opportunities in Mexico City based. And that's it.
Thank you, Maria. Christina?
I joined the same project 5 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago. I was doing my PhD on social justice and proposed to Maria to grow the project beyond the magazine. I think that the is a central tool that is super valuable. But I really believe that social transformation is crucial to aid the unhoused, and I think that's why the INSP, it's incredible, because it's not only a way to earn some money, but also to generate encounters and chats that debunk prejudice. So I got very excited about it, but then I proposed to open an arts program and that I coordinate, and a social transformation plan as well. So I do that for Mi Válida.
Great, thank you, Cristina. So from Mexico to London, Andre.
We're part of the international network of street
Yes.
papers.
I'm a local yokel. I'm from London. My name is Andre. I sell the big issue. I'm homeless. I'm not on the street. I'm in temporary accommodation. Because I have children. I think if you didn't have children, I'd probably end up on the street. I sell the big issue. The big issue is the local newspaper here, the local street newspaper. It's just essentially a current affairs magazine, but it does have an arts and book and culture section at the back, like every other normal weekly magazine. The thing I like about street newspapers is that it's an encounter with a homeless person that it shows you that homelessness isn't helplessness. Homelessness can meet you on an equal level and be a transactional thing. Just take any, like as you go into Boots or you go into WH Smith's and buy a book or whatever, you can buy a book from a big issue vendor. So homelessness doesn't equal helplessness, and homelessness doesn't have to be hidden. You don't have to be ashamed or worried about being homelessness in the sense that it devalues you. So it's a fabulous thing in that respect. So that's it.
Great, thank you, Andre. I'm going to throw to Janice now online. Janice, can you hear me okay? Oh, it looks like you're on mute.
Doctor Who. We can hear you, yes.
We can't hear.
It's like a seance.
I can't hear. Can it?
Oh,
No, we
they-
can't. We can't.
Sorry, I can only hear because I'm next to the TV. Other people can't hear.
Can we get a breakout room because then I can boost the volume without it being
Right.
Is that sorted, or do you want me to go and get my own?
We're just going
Yeah.
to sort out a breakout room. So
Get the microphone.
Yeah, we're just going to sort out a breakout room for you, Janice. Sorry, so that the audio works. So just give us 1 second.
Thanks, Janice. Back with you in 1 minute.
So you said Mill.
Do something in the gap. Sing them a song.
Dance. María Cristina quiere gobernar.
Juliana, was it speaking? Yes.
You could sing your big
Right.
issue song.
Right. No,
Did you bring a guitar?
I like to hide behind the guitar. So.
Yeah. So I think.
And any other songs I know are too rude for this.
I don't know this.
And with the slides.
Huh?
You have slides.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's nothing. There's no words. It's just photographs.
Okay. Okay.
That's just in the background.
Have I done the right thing?
So where are we all from? Is everybody here from like the UK, or is people come from millions of miles away?
Only us.
I'm just thinking about it.
Los Angeles.
Los Angeles.
And Los Angeles. Yeah.
That's pretty far.
The best tea.
representing Yorkshire.
You've probably come the furthest then in that sense, culturally. You're the just-
He's 17.
Is that, oh, right. Is that the gang you're in, or is that where you came from?
Well, yeah, so.
I'm staying in Stratford at the moment, so halfway there. Walthamstow has this mile-long street market, like nearly 2 kilometre long street market. It's astonishing. You can buy anything. It's really, so you're a privileged person in that sense.
Yeah.
Wow. So, on Newham. Okay, so deal with fellow Newhamites. Yeah, well, Stratford's Newham, yeah. So do you all do arts projects? What do you all do?
Finland.
I know you've probably introduced yourself, but I've just got here, so...
Should we try now?
Oh, no,
Okay.
we're back.
Oh, this,
I feel rude now. I hope you had something back to.
this Juliana. You can see Juliana.
Looking
You
very
can't see
serious.
Janice though.
I think that's the wrong
Oh,
person.
sorry. I'm
Yeah.
the wrong person.
We could start with Juliana. Let's do that.
That's an idea.
Juliana, can you hear me? Can we hand over to you to introduce yourself first, and then we'll. Yeah.
Right, sorry about the feedback. It's the only thing I feel I can do. No?
Okay, so I should just introduce myself then.
Yes.
Yes? Okay. My name is Janice. I'm from the street paper and NGO Surprise in Switzerland. I've been working there for over 8 years. We produce a street magazine, a bi-monthly street magazine. And actually this year we will be celebrating our 600th issue. So that's, that's really great. Surprise was founded in 1998, so it's been around for a while. It's also the only street paper in Switzerland, but Switzerland is very small anyway, and we are distributing the newspaper in the German-speaking part of Switzerland by about 350 vendors at any given time, and we sell about 22,000 copies per issue. We also, apart from the street magazine, we also have different social projects like the street choir, the street soccer, then the social city tours that we have tour guides presenting the cities of the major German-speaking cities in Bern, Basel and Zurich. And we have a few other smaller projects that don't mainly deal with selling the magazine. But of course, the magazine is our main source of income.
Brilliant. Thank you, Janice. I don't know if she can hear me yet. We'll hand over to Juliana.
Hi, everybody. I
Excellent.
cannot see you or hear you well, but I hope you can hear me. My name is Juliana. I'm the CEO of Traços Magazine in Brazil, which is this magazine here. I don't know if you can see well. Traços Magazine is also, as Nivaledor, celebrating 10 years this year. We run in 2 different cities. We run in Brasília, where I'm talking from. We are based in Brasília, the capital city. And 4 years ago, we also started running in Rio de Janeiro. So it's been really great. Unlikely most of the street papers, we are 100% focused on art. So we have a lot to talk about because our art for Traços Magazine means absolutely everything. So we don't have, projects about art. We are an art project. So I'm sure we have plenty to talk about.
Excellent. Thank you, Juliana, and apologies everybody for the momentary loss of IT. So you're already starting to get a bit of a flavour for some of the street paper members that we have. So now I'm going to crack on and ask some questions of the panel. And I'll just go the order we went in. So I'm going to come to you first of all, Maria.
Great.
So what do you think the role of arts and creativity is for street papers? It'd be really great to hear some of your projects.
Well, at Mi Valedor, it goes hand in hand. You say that? Hand in hand with the project, because we give twice a week workshops of art and photography and writing, and the vendors write for the magazine and contribute to the magazine. But also, Cristina is going to tell you a little bit more about our art program. But that has been life-changing. I think creativity is a very powerful tool to change their lives in a way that, for their mental health, I think that's one of the reasons I see most important, because instead of focusing on all the problems they have in life, which are massive, I think art and creativity can make you be in the moment and be a little bit more connected to the spiritual. And it's a form of expression that, like, finding their own voice, and that's what Mi Valedor is about also, like street papers, I think, in general. But so they find another way to find a voice and express themselves, and that's also a very interesting tool to have. And yeah, that's for me.
Brilliant, thank you, Maria. A really great point around the mental health aspect of it, the health and well-being part of it. But Christina,
I wanted to show, so the magazine is in Mexico City, is mainly a photography magazine of street photography. It's really beautiful, and it has contributors that are professional photographers, but also many pictures that are taken by the vendors. And seeing it, like the layout and everything, is super beautiful. Maria is the editor, and I think she does a great work. But we also do, as we found out through the years, that art was very important, because a lot of the vendors really stick to the project much more and attended it much more when we opened like a proper arts program. We discovered it was just very, very, very important, and the artists that give the workshops, I'm very close to a collective of painters that are all expressionist painters. So they show expressionist techniques, so they want to evade just learning like precise human figures for all of us to do exactly what reality looks like, and all our drawings look the same. They don't want to do that. They want people to find their own line and their own voice, and it's funny and it's sweet, because some of them come for the first times and we say like, "Oh, that's amazing." They're like, "These people are crazy. This is not cool." But then after time, you start discovering, and myself, I go to the workshops and all, that you actually have a personal like line and like imaginary universe, and it gets exciting, and it gives you a reason to keep on coming, and so we set up exhibitions where we sell very well, and that's also like a form of income for the vendors. And we've also have done like side by side of the magazine fanzines, but these are like individual. So it depends on like the particular interests and knowledge that the vendors have. So there's a guy that does like punk cartoons. It's super fun and it's beautiful. These are recipes of food with collage that the vendor set up like in a workshop as well, and these are poems and photographies by a different one. So I think art and creativity is absolutely crucial for like our street paper.
brilliant, thank you both. And Andre, you're coming at it from a slightly different perspective. I wonder if you could share some of your experiences, particularly on the creative writing side of what you've been doing.
Absolutely. A bit about the big issue first. The big issue, I don't think, was established in quite the same spirit as Mi Valedor and the other various newspapers. Yeah. The big issue was printed and is printed and distributed primarily as a news magazine, so it has current affairs, it has so forth. And at the back, the last, 10, 15 pages, are culture. So there are books, there are film reviews, there are art reviews and so on. So, and the idea of the big issue I think is subtly different as well, because John Bird, I call him like the last Victorian. John Bird has this idea that you can work your way out of poverty. Of course you can't, but nonetheless, selling the big issue is a valuable and incredible tool for people who can't necessarily work in other circumstances. But so consequently, the big issue is seen as a kind of instrument of work and an instrument of just employability, rather than a cultural thing. It's become a cultural thing, but because it's inevitable with a magazine. So now, vendors do obviously, because vendors are just people. Vendors produce art, vendors produce literature, vendors produce all sorts of artistic things that everyone else produces. And the big issue is increasingly accommodating that. At the moment, there are very few vendors who write for the magazine, but hopefully that will change. And the vendor contribution to the magazine isn't as big as perhaps it could be. But that's okay, because the magazine is serving its purpose of employability and sort of giving people a role and a foot in the real world and contact with support services. Me personally, I happen to write and happen to do all sorts and sing and so forth, but that's just me personally. The big issue does have various branches. It has a shop, and consequently there are big issue vendors who produce art and produce little artworks and so on, and the big issue does in fact stock them in the shop and promote them in that way. And ad hoc, the big issue promotes its internal artists, as it were, the vendors. And I've had the good fortune, I'm actually in the big issue this week, because I've written a book. I wrote a book about alienation, and it's set in the West End, and the main character is a big issue vendor. It's not biographical, it's just, as William Burroughs, I think, said, write about what you know. So it's set in that context, but really it's a psychology book. It's about alienation, and it's very much a literary book. It aspires to be a very literary book. So, but that's me, and that happens to be me. It's not particularly fostered by the big issue, although it is now, but that's just luck and coincidence. So I think the big issue can learn a lot from Mi Valedor, it can learn a lot from the other papers about including vendors rather than having vendors as a sort of channel and an object of charity. And in fact, the Finnish newspaper, I believe, is actually owned by the vendors, and they're hiring via the staff. So without changing the structure of the big issue, they could have a bit more inclusivity of vendors. Sorry, I completely lost track of what you asked.
That's okay. No, it was good. It was great. And
It's a great.
it's actually, I think you're talking about Denmark. Sorry, Maria, you were going to say.
Yeah, Denmark,
No.
obviously. Yeah.
So Denmark, so Hus Forby, who we heard from at our
Yeah.
summit in September in
It's
Liverpool.
owned by the vendors.
So their vendors are essentially their boards of directors.
Yeah.
So their vendors are actually owning the organisations. So they've kind of flipped the model, for want of a better way to describe it.
Yeah.
But Andre's book is called The Muffin Man. It's published by
I want
Artblind
to-
Foundation.
I want to read it.
It's a good book. I know I wrote it, but
It's a great read. I'm going to throw over to Janice now.
Yeah.
Janice, if you can hear me, fingers crossed. What do you think the role of arts and creativity is for street papers?
Okay. I think street papers have a special interest in and offer a very good platform for arts and creativity for people affected by poverty and homelessness because of the way they allow people to express their skills and connect with society in a different way, meaning that the focus is not only on, economic performance, how much you earn, how well you're doing at your job, but focus on the human being as a whole. So the human being is not just about, earning money and performing in society, but also about other things like what your values are, what your thoughts are on life, and also your creative skills. And I'm just always amazed at all this talent that is actually within our organization, our street paper, Surprise. And I think they are able to gain a visibility, gain a voice, and also are able to touch people on an emotional level through creative things. Like I want to touch on our choir. We have a street choir, and there are people in there that sell the magazine, but also other people who are marginalized, who are lonely, who maybe have a mental illness. And for these people, coming together every week to sing is just something that really affects their lives in a positive way. And they have about 15 to 20 concerts during the year. So of course, they can also show their skills. And it's just so amazing how people are really touched by this choir. And the choir is not about singing, perfect melodies, but it's about being together, about enjoying singing together. It's like a big family. And I think especially where you have people, like in Switzerland, a lot of people don't speak the German language well, and we have about 80% of our vendors and choir and singers that don't really speak German well. So to be able to express themselves in music or in arts, in performance, in dance, is just a really, really good way to show themselves and also to connect. So I think that yeah, it's a wonderful thing that street papers can actually offer.
Excellent. Thank you, Janice, and really great showing the expression and also the community aspect of it. And we'll come back to you shortly because I'm keen that you have the chance to share the kind of learnings from the exhibition project that you did local to you. So I'll hand back to Juliana.
Thank you, Mike. Actually, we do believe that cultural art are an amazing tool for social transformation. Interesting thing to say is that for us, we don't call our vendors vendors. We call them spokespeople of culture because they do not only sell the magazine, but they speak on behalf of culture. And we do believe that art and culture gives them access to the city. And this is one very important thing because they live in the city and they don't have access to basic cultural spaces. And since we talk about culture, we write about culture, we breathe culture, and we also give them access to culture. And this changes everything. Every time we print a magazine and we present the magazine to the vendors that we call spokespeople of culture, firstly, it opens the mind. You know, it gives them different perspectives. You know, it gives them a lot of things to think about and also access to the city. We have a lot of things happening, and every time we can, we take the vendors to, you know, museums, to festivals and all that. So what we want is to have them accessing that, not only by reading the magazine, which is something nice, but also by accessing themselves, all those spaces, because, you know, they are part of it. It's interesting to say that Traços were born as a cultural project, you know, and we have been a cultural project ever since, and we have like hundreds of examples on how culture, you know, changes the perspectives of our vendors, you know, and something that happens is that the cultural network helps us. Because we talk about, you know, artists, we talk about all kind of art, gastronomy, well, music and dance and everything. And all these people of culture ends up helping us, you know, doing the work of giving these vendors access to art. So, you know, I could be talking here like forever because we breathe art. But I believe that giving access to the city is something very important to us.
Great, thank you, Juliana. Juliana, I've just got one small follow-up question for you. You've obviously described not using the term vendors and using spokespeople of culture. What do you think the impact is on those people? What do you think the impact is on people you're working with in terms of flipping it and calling them spokespeople of culture?
You know, I wish I could have some of our vendors, our spokespeople here to talk from their perspectives, because we believe that this changes a lot because it gives them this sense of belonging. It's like they speak on behalf of culture, they know culture, and sometimes they arrive at Traços, you know, not believing that culture is for them, art is for them. They often say, you know, this is not for me. I'm not in a situation to know about art, to consume art. This is not for me. And we change that. You know, we change that perspective. And at the end, they are like empowered to say, I'm a spokespeople of culture. So for us, this is a small thing, but it means a lot. It means a lot to them, and it means a lot to us as well.
Yeah, it's a small thing but significant impact. That's great. Thank you, Juliana.
Absolutely.
So my next question for the panel is, in your view, how does the arts and creativity break down barriers to understanding and create opportunities, particularly for people facing homelessness and poverty? And we've kind of covered some of that, but I wonder if you could drill into some more details of some of the projects. Maria, I'll hand to you.
Like, I think it's very important to build bridges. Like, yeah, not build, how to say it?
Yeah, build.
Yeah, bridges.
Build bridges between galleries, museums, them and this sector in the arts world. That way, you're gonna have like much more impact in their lives and in the lives of the people who go and see their artwork or who read the magazine, and that way you'll make a community in the arts.
Brilliant. Thank you. Christina?
Yeah, the same. Like we offer the magazine and these fanzines and the paintings and collages and engravings that we do through workshops in cultural spaces, and we take them seriously. The cultural spaces take them seriously. The public takes them seriously, and themselves learn to take it seriously. It means a lot. And what happens is, through all these exhibitions and events, we generate just hangouts, like environments, party environments where we're all like being friends horizontally, and it really. A professor of mine told me this recently. Like, you help them have a network that had been lost through your own friends and the people that are coming to see their art, like, seriously, and have conversations. So you build up a network, and that helps tear down barriers, because discrimination is like the worst of them. The worst of them. Yeah.
Great. So we have a lot of networking community. Yeah, Andre, what's your take on it?
Well, culture is more than art galleries and paintings and stuff. Culture was rap, culture was things that came up from the street, from the real world, and have ultimately, quite a lot of them, been co-opted into this rarefied world of galleries and so forth. But I think we need to, as you said, pest the galleries and pest the established art institutions to be more inclusive, pester them, and then perhaps marry some of our projects with, say, the Tate Britain or wherever, and drag them into the real world and force ourselves into their world, because they shouldn't be two separate worlds. The world of culture isn't a separate world from people. Things that people do everywhere in the street, every day, Morris dancing, whatever, it's all culture. And the other thing, of course, is that homelessness in the arts is just a kind of exacerbation. It's just an exaggeration of the neglect of the arts in general in these countries at the moment. And the arts are just not being funded, they're not being supported, and people and artists of all sorts, from all backgrounds, aren't being facilitated, especially women and especially poor people, and especially people who are perceived as minorities. It's just the whole thing is wrong, and it's a systemic issue that we can perhaps shout about from our end of the world, but we need to perhaps be a bit more agitated about.
I like that description. A bit more agitated.
Yes.
Or more aggressive.
Yeah, and the big issue can definitely, as I said, learn from your papers, because the big issue wasn't established with that in mind. The big issue is that was established as a work thing, to get people into work, to facilitate people into work in society. It wasn't established as an art project. It can be massaged to include more art, and should be, but at the moment it isn't.
Great, thank you, Andre.
I agree.
Janice, I'm going to hand over to you, and I don't know if now's a good time for you to talk about your exhibition project in Switzerland.
Sure. It's not like an art exhibition by our vendors, but at Surprise we've been working over the years with different, I should say, cultural, artistic institutions like theaters, arts festivals. We have been asked also to collaborate on various artistic projects where people who are interested do actually work with these theaters, and actually have we don't have like an arts project, a Surprise arts project itself, but These sort of collaborations have been really, really interesting, I think, for both sides. I think there's a lot of learnings that both sides can take from each other. There's somebody mentioned it's like a bridge, and I see it as well as is a bridge to connecting, to overcoming prejudice about homelessness, about poverty, and really about getting to know each other and realizing we're all human beings. And you know, there's the stories behind why somebody actually becomes poor is you know, once you get to know the person, you will understand also some of the structural causes of poverty, you know, societal problems that they're there. I think that really helps break down that prejudice that a lot of people have towards homeless people and poor people. But Mike, you've been asking me about this exhibition we had last year. Actually, it was with a museum in Bern, and this is the capital city of Switzerland. And this museum is really interesting because it's for free, so everybody can just go in and enjoy. I think that's also really important, that people just can have access to a museum or a theater without having to pay money, because money, if you have to pay, you know, it excludes a lot of people. So this is something really cool about this museum. And they asked us if we wanted to do something on poverty, about our work with Surprise. So, but we were really quite, we really at first didn't, we were focusing on doing something on migration in Switzerland. But then, as coincidence has it, somehow the idea came up that we are all, the street papers is really a very cool and international concept that, that actually we would like to show the public how street papers and all the projects, the other projects that street papers do have, how they work, and show some of the, also the impact that poverty has on people, and sort of what causes poverty, and how actually so many street papers around the world actually are fight for the same cause, you know, for the eradication of poverty in very different ways, and they are very diverse. And of course, then we also focused a little bit in our exhibition on Surprise and how Surprise works, but also always in the broader sense of how street papers in general work and what they do. And it was really the first time we've worked with a museum on that scale, and it was very, very successful. We had a lot of visitors, and it was, as I said, it was for free, so I think a lot of people were able to see and understand a bit more about, not only about street papers, but also about issues of poverty, homelessness, mental illness, what are some of the structural causes behind it. We had from several different newspapers, we had portraits of, you know, who they are, where they are located. We had portraits of different vendors all over the world. We had video clips, we had podcasts where people could hear people talking about the street papers and various other projects they have, just to give them a sort of an idea of, you know, what we're all doing. And it was even extended. The exhibition was supposed to last only for, I think, 4 months, but it was extended to, I think, 6 or 8 months. So obviously, I think the echo was very positive.
Excellent. Thank you, Janice. And I've got a curiosity, you won't necessarily know the answer to this, but with the extension of the exhibition, I wonder if that's partly to do with people's heightened awareness around some of the issues surrounding homelessness and poverty, given it's more out there. I don't know if you have a view on that.
Well, that's the hope, and that's what we actually want to achieve in the end. But I think probably, I mean, I guess the museum, the curator, decided, well, it's so popular and so many people are coming that we just want to, give them more time, give people more opportunity to maybe come again, because the content of the exhibition was very rich. I mean, there was a lot of things you could learn, you could read about, you could listen to. So I guess it's just, some people probably went there 2 or 3 times because it's also for free. So, I think it did help towards creating an understanding of poverty and on the role that street papers have, because most people they know that there's a street paper, surprise, but they don't know that around the world there's the same concept of street papers. They're always very surprised, and they also don't know the dimensions of what these street papers do. So I think that was really enriching.
Excellent. Thank you. Juliana, back to Brazil.
Back to Brazil. It's interesting to hear Janice saying about people not knowing that the street papers are there, and we are huge. It's interesting because in Brazil, although we have a big poverty issue, which is worldwide known, we do have this problem. The concept of street papers are not very common in Brazil. We only have 5 street papers in a continental country, and people normally don't know. They normally, it's strange for them, the concept of a street paper. And when we say that we are everywhere in the world, they get really surprised. Even in Brazil, people don't know very well. And when we say it's over, everywhere, it's even more interesting to see the reaction. But coming back to your first question about opportunities that art and culture give to people facing poverty and homelessness, for us, something that happens is, since we work with culture, the network, as I mentioned before, the cultural network are the biggest responsible for the opportunities that arises. And we normally say that we create a network that protects our vendors and gives opportunities. And protects because people know the vendors and they do not let any harm happen to them. So we create this cord of protection and also of opportunities, because most of the opportunities that we offer to our vendors, not only to go to, a show or something like that, but real job opportunities, they come from the cultural network. Because people know Traços, people know the vendors, so all the opportunities, or most of the opportunities that arise, come from the cultural field. So culture is basically everything. And the protection is really important for us, because we know that they will feel safe to go to a movie. They will feel safe because people know them. So this is really important to us.
Yeah, that's great, Juliana. So there's kind of 2 lenses to that. One is around your last point around people feel comfortable in cultural environments, with movies being one aspect of it. And then the other thing you were describing was around how Traços as an organisation is well connected within your local community. So some people you're working directly with go and land other work opportunities, paid opportunities within the wider cultural sector. Yeah, so it's that ripple effect, which I think is really powerful and really clear.
Absolutely.
So we're cantering through time very quickly, and we only have just over 10 minutes left. So what's been the most surprising impact of the arts projects or activities you've worked on?
Yeah, so we have a special case with one of our vendors who picked up a pencil by the first time at age 68, and he loves to draw. He's an impressive artist, and you see the impact in his life. He cannot miss a workshop, and that again is like a very interesting one. But I wanted to tell you very briefly about, because I'm an artist, I'm a painter, so I made an exhibition around consumption, and there was a panel, well, in the inauguration day, there was a panel of people speaking about consumption in substances, like which is like psychoactive substances. And in the panel there was one of our vendors talking about the consumption in the streets, then a mental health specialist, and some other people in the, and so that way people come and see painting, but they get to see the, you know, the social issues that they wouldn't normally know about, and I think that it combines really well. And yeah,
art helps a lot to get people engaged in topics we want to speak about. And also I think involving art in the project works very well if you're looking for harm reduction. So it would be important for them like it's a reason not to maybe drink because they have to be well for the workshop, and as they get engaged they also find better reasons to harm themselves less in that sense. Consumption is a big topic, of course, when we think about homelessness in Mexico.
So the mental health and the health and well-being aspect comes into this as well, as we talked about earlier. Andre?
Well, physically selling the magazine is an enormous boost to mental health in general. I think you were mentioning about your choirs. You get people who come to the choir and they're like, oh. And you get people who come to vending or selling street newspapers and they've got their street newspapers and they're sort of like, I'm. And after a while they become more confident through interaction with people, through interaction with normal, because most people are normal, most people are sympathetic. So the act of selling the newspaper encourages sort of inclusion here, and of course financial inclusion, but it also puts you in touch, as one of the speakers there said, with other opportunities, because you become much more a part of society. Obviously the same could be said here in Britain of pensions. The only thing, and I lament it again, Britain is a country that's become kind of cold to the arts at the moment, temporarily, and the big issue itself can be part of overcoming that, but there's a hill to climb that doesn't sort of exist in Latin America and in some other places where the arts are much more appreciated and much more seen as an integral part of humanity. Here, if you're not economically productive in certain terms, then you're just not relevant. So the big issue, to be fair, it does do its bit, but there's a lot of campaigning to be done to actually get awareness of arts at all, let alone homeless arts, going more in Britain. So.
Good call to action.
Yeah.
Britain must do better. Janet?
I think what has really, it's surprising in a way, but it's not surprising, is, and it's been said before by other panelists, that people really feel empowered by actually taking part in these arts and culture activities, social activities. It has to do with, you know, being seen, being able to show that you have skills other than just, you know, being able to work. And as I said, in Switzerland, it's very, very hard to get into the labor market because people don't have the work experience. They don't speak the language. You know, they come from countries where, especially for women, you know, they're not allowed to be even seen. They're not allowed to work. So they come here with nothing. And when you can actually empower them, that they can realize, well, I've got skills. I can do a lot of things, and I can show other people what I can do through our little projects. We have a wonderful women's project where they actually have They meet to discuss topics that are really important to them, to their lives, to their families. They talk about education. They talk also about job opportunities, careers, but also about self-worth, about being able to be somebody who actually who has many skills, and they can also show those skills in like a Women's Day. And it's just amazing that when you see them in the beginning and after a while, how they've progressed to somebody who can really stand there and be proud of themselves. That's just always, it's really amazing. And I just love that. And I love to talk about the impact these projects have on people. And I'm so proud actually to say that Surprise does create opportunities for people that goes beyond just earning money. It's also important, yes, but it's much more than that.
Excellent. Thank you, Janice. I think it's really clear the impact beyond the financial gain aspect of it as well. So we started today, obviously, when I mentioned the monetary aspect of vendors earning money, but what we're hearing is a much wider health and well-being benefit that's coming from getting involved in street papers. Juliana?
Well, we have little big surprises every day with our projects. And I'll give you just a small example of something that happened recently to give you an idea of this small, big impact that culture and projects have on our vendors and people in vulnerability. We organized an activity in Rio de Janeiro at Christ Redeemer Monument. The Christ Redeemer Monument is well known and people can see from the ground, but not many people go up because it's touristic, it's expensive. So most of our vendors, they see Christ Redeemer Monument every day, but they never been up there. So we have this big thing and we took all of them to go up Christ Redeemer. And we hired these very fancy saxophonists. I don't know, that's the word? Saxophone?
Yes.
Saxophonist?
Yeah.
We hired this really fancy saxophonist, and it's really elegant, to be playing up there. And people were questioning, well, will they like that? Because it's a fancy thing. And we did hire him. And at some point, one of the vendors, she comes to me and she said, people think that only because we are in a vulnerable situation, we don't appreciate good music. We don't appreciate good stuff. And for me, dignity is this. Dignity is to be able to hear a really nice saxophone playing for me. And everybody there was like, that's the impact. Be small, but big.
Yeah. Brilliant example, Juliana. Get a round of applause. It's a great example. The word dignity, obviously, as well. It's hugely, hugely important. So we're nearly at time. Just next few minutes to go. Before I ask the final question, have people got questions from the audience here or online? Because I don't want people thinking I'm dominating, which I am doing, to be honest with you. At the back. Sorry, I don't know your name.
My name's Anthony. Hello, it's been so wonderful to hear about these projects and the way in which they've enabled cultural access and imparted personal benefits and impacted society and provided ways of health and well-being to be amplified and supported. But I'm really curious about, and sorry to bring it back to money, I'm really curious about the business models behind the projects and the way in which the projects can function beyond simply providing often quite a meager income for the sellers or vendors, and given that to publish something, to organise something takes a really collective effort, a collaborative effort of skills. People who are editors, art directors, designers, administrators. So there's all these different kind of avenues and routes for people to either be trained or to be employed with the skills that they already bring. And so I just wondered if you could talk a little bit more about the ways in which your projects are vehicles for those kinds of forms of employability.
Yeah, great. So I don't know if Juliana and Janice heard. Did you hear that first or not? Okay, so very succinctly,
Not
because
so well.
yeah, you spoke very much more eloquently than I'm about it, but Anthony was asking about the business model, so going back a bit to the financial aspect, so how are street papers running as businesses, so how are we able to, you haven't quite used this phrase, but how are we able to pay ourselves, given it's small amounts of income for people as well, how it's sustainable? And was there anybody in particular you wanted to answer that? Anthony, was it for
I just
anybody?
think across the board, and
Yeah.
perhaps even drawing upon your observations, because that model that you mentioned in Denmark sounds like a really interesting model as well. And especially in the context of the decline of print media and the ways in which traditional forms of print media are reinventing themselves in digital and online spaces.
Yeah, so rather than just hearing from me, and I can chat to you after the session if it's helpful, I can give you some broader stuff. Anybody in particular want to answer that from the panel?
I could.
Yeah.
Do you?
No, no.
So the magazine is, we had adverts, so that's how the magazine is paid, and they buy, the vendors buy it for 8 pesos, and it costs 40 pesos. So all the money it's for them. Well, apart from the 8 pesos, the art program is a different story but the magazine is paid like that. Adverts.
I think that's the predominant model for street newspapers in that sense, that the physical sale of the paper and advertising within it funds it. But crucial to street newspapers is actually that they are physically on the street and they're physically sold, because that's the bit that helps people. That's the bit that helps both the public understand more about homelessness, and both the vendors, and vendors is the word I have to use, but become more part of society. So that it should never lose that aspect is desperately important. And actually, you say it's declining, but it's holding up quite well, incredibly, in this environment. It's holding, put it this way, the Standard had to go, various other newspapers have had to go, but the street newspapers are actually bobbing along. They're kind of not quite at rock bottom, but they're bobbing along. And you know, I think people appreciate that physicality, that communication with the vendors. And I think there's always a place for that. Whether you print it on recycled materials or find some environmentally sustainable sort of improvement, that's one thing or another. But it has to stay on the street and it has to stay human.
Yeah, and
Exactly.
there's another fundamental point which I think might
Yeah.
partly answer your question.
Sorry,
Street papers, some of them, not all of them, are owned by wider non-profits or charities as we call them in the UK. So they're sitting within a wider project. So sometimes they have the resources behind the wider project, so bigger budgets that enable them to continue to keep going.
But to be fair, most of the print ones are actually sustaining themselves.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
Sorry.
Yeah. My question is how do the vehicles of the street newspapers enable employability routes for vendors or for people experiencing homelessness beyond simply selling?
In England, they don't enough. I don't know about that.
There's Big Issue Recruit, which exists
Yeah.
as part of the Big Issue.
Yeah.
So very simplistic terms, it's like a recruitment agency. So it's looking at beyond the vending. What you're asking basically, how can people be matched to jobs based on what they've done being enterprising, entrepreneurial and selling their papers.
But I think you meant within the papers, and that's not a thing that happens in Britain so much, but yeah.
And also, what we have discovered is like they not all of our vendors want a job, like a 9-to-5 job. So we've given them the tools to be an artist, and we've also given them the bridges with galleries and stuff for them to sell their art, and that has been also a very important income in our case. And the art program is we get sponsors to pay for it, for the art program, either sponsors or like people donating monthly. That's another like business model.
Great. Janice, did you want to come in, Janice? I think you've been trying to come in.
Yeah, just quickly, because we are actually a charity, as you would say, and so I said in the beginning that our main income is generated by the sales of the street magazine, which of course then goes back into producing the magazine, but then also, you know, we have this support system in the background where people, vendors can get counseling, they can get help on all sorts of administrative things, they can get legal help. We can also, hook them up with other social organizations that will help them. And then also we have a lot of funding coming in, especially our social projects, like for instance the Street Choir, that are funded by different foundations, but we have private people sponsoring, we have companies that sponsor, so we have a little bit of income through adverts, but not so much. What we are really proud of is that we are not government funded, so we don't receive any government grants or funding at all. We don't want that. We want to remain independent. So, and we've been able to keep that up, and also to maybe to let you understand a little bit about who our vendors are. So we have people who are gainfully employed also in the labor market. They have job, but usually it's small jobs, temporary jobs, you know, that don't really, and being able to sell the street paper will help them to generate a bit more income. Sometimes people are also with social services, or we have people with mental illnesses who cannot, you know, go into the labor market at all and find a normal job. So for them, it's more about having a daily structure, being able to, you know, have your social contacts. So there's so many different people who are selling the street magazine. A few of them really do it like it's their major source of income, but those are not so many. But everybody is welcome. Everybody who has a working permit is welcome to sell the newspaper.
Great, thank you. And Jordan, you had a question?
Kind of continuing with what you were saying. So what's your name?
Mike.
Sorry.
Maria.
Also, Maria. With regards to entrepreneurship and how you, as organizations, you're helping people who come to you, as you said before, alternatives to a 9-to-5 and how to become entrepreneurs in terms of how entrepreneurship sits in the wider society, things like tax, things like accounting, things like, yeah, that side of things. Like, what are you guys doing to support entrepreneurship and a life of entrepreneurship? Not necessarily just, okay, I've come to you because I'm in desperation. How do I begin a life as an artist and an entrepreneur from this point forward? And also, another thing also I wanted to say was, on the way here, I spoke to one of the biggest shoe vendors, and he didn't have a card machine because he just wasn't interested in having a digital way of selling his magazines. What are some of the ways that you guys are doing to support people who might not necessarily want to be involved in the digital age, but also how can you help people as an organization? For example, I couldn't even have a car machine, so I couldn't buy a magazine, but he's now not ready to sell as a result. We had a conversation, a good conversation, I'm glad we spoke, but you know, ideally there would have been a means for me to be able to make the purchase some other way.
Yeah, we're conscious of time as well, so if we take one of your questions, and then I can chat to you, or we can all speak to you after this. So why don't we take the first one about entrepreneurship? So Jordan was asking around, how do street papers encourage entrepreneurship for the people we're supporting? So particularly artistic entrepreneurship. Maria, you look as though you've got
the thing is, we do have a teamwork of social workers who go through what they need with them. So companionship, very specific companionship. Personalized.
So we get all the identity cards that are needed and bankerize them and give them a terminal.
And and go with them to
so they can charge with card and have their papers in order. It's part of the work.
May I say?
Yes, go for it.
In our case, we do have a vendors program that we called Spokespeople Journey. So we do have a team of, social workers, psychologists that, join them until from the time they arrive, from the time they leave the magazine. So when they arrive, we hear them to understand what are their goals. So for instance, if they say, oh, my dream is to go back to studies, and then we do a planning for them to reach that, and then they are, joined by our team every step of the way. So we don't, give up. We are with them, and we have a team that are specialized in that, to be able to give this assistance beyond selling the magazine.
Thank you, Juliana. And I think behind Jordan, sorry, I don't know
it's more
your
of a
question
rather than a closing question.
Okay.
I won't do it.
We can speak. Yeah. Come and chat to us later. Yes. I'm sorry we've run over time.
Thank you so much.
But thank you so much. First of all, to all our panelists. Appreciate your time. Thanks to all of you for your time as well. I'm sorry about the IT issues earlier on.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Answer any
Really
questions.
grateful for Mike for putting together this panel. It's wonderful to see you all. Just a couple of tiny reflections. Juliana, you reminded me that for the lighting of the Olympic torch at Corcovado, the Umeso Vos choir in Rio were there singing for the lighting of the Olympic torch, and there's a homeless choir, so that was an amazing experience. A quick shout out to Raft Up, which is new magazine, very unusual kind of model, created by Arnell, who's in the room, so please see him afterwards to chat about that. And our hope, I guess, for the international network of arts and homelessness is to work more closely with a network of street papers who are incredible. And not only because we share so many different projects, but there are so many cultural spaces around the world who really want to open up more to homelessness. And we have this same sort of network of cultural spaces in all countries who really want to have exhibitions for artists who are or have been homeless. So I think that would be a great thing to look into the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shukri, and the translators online. Really, really appreciated. See you at 2 o'clock for the next panel.
Yay.
Can we get a photograph together? Yeah. Rachel.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Juliana. Thank you, Janice.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.